Joseph Conrad's foray into the African jungle was for him the proverbial loss of innocence that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Conrad described African colonialism as the vilest scramble for loot that ever disfigured the history of human conscious and geographical exploration. Heart of Darkness has become synonymous with a lot of things, many positive, many negative, some true and some untrue. As a landmark text in the English language, though, no one can deny how the legacy has shaped both the literary imagination and the practice of literary studies in the past 100 or so years. On a basic level, Conrad's short but infinitely dense novella is an indictment of the horrors of European colonialism that contains suggestions of racism and misogyny. Below the surface, however, it is a mental replica of what was emerging in the European psyche. The foray into the mind was just beginning, and beyond the exotic lushness and the dark mystery lay horrors unimaginable. It was as though he was traveling to the heart of what would end up being the violent and troubling 20th century. Heart of Darkness starts off with Marlowe on a boat in the Thames estuary telling a story to a lawyer, businessman and accountant, or three people who, given the circumstances, may have a foot in the open door of imperialized Africa. Marlowe, sitting like a Buddha, tells the story of his journey up the Congo River as a supposed missionary. He begins in oddly morbid Brussels, and from there he moves from one of the three stations along the river in Africa. At the outer one, he is met by a well-dressed accountant that tells him about a mysterious ivory trader called Kurtz that is hidden deep in the jungle. When he gets in the central station, though, he figures out that Kurtz may not be who he's slated to be. Two men, a manager and his uncle, try to delay Marlowe's travels to stifle Kurtz. When Marlowe finds him at his jungle outpost, he realizes that a sort of cult has developed around Kurtz. His entourage includes a beautiful African woman and a crazed Russian harlequin, but from the start it's evident that Kurtz is sick and he is dying. The camp is filled with piles of ivory and includes visible heads planted on stakes. After unsuccessfully escaping and ranting madly in the process, Kurtz utters his last, oft-quoted words, "The horror, the horror." Marlowe then returns to Europe a better man, supposedly, but the narrator will make one more betrayal when he bold-facedly lies to Kurtz's estranged wife. One of the most important things about Heart of Darkness is that it is specifically layered. It is a story within a story, and even that tale moves along in fixed increments. The outer to the inner stations mark the transition from the realistic to the utterly symbolic. I think what Conrad is doing is he's establishing that everywhere is layered, and in the case of the book, darkness exists in all places. It is not merely reserved to Kurtz's inner station. The whited sepulchre that he calls Brussels, of course, hides something beneath the bright image of death. Europe is hiding something. Conrad is also making use of old literary traditions to point out the ironies of his journey. The eccentrics he meets almost seem like episodes on some quest, but this isn't your conventional adventure novel. Most characters he meets in the Congo, the missionaries, managers, and accountants for one, in no way act out their title. They are walking contradictions. I think that we need to consider the way that Marlowe misreads the African world as well. His excessive use of dualities, that is, the darkness and light, the black and white, is, in my opinion, a misinterpretation of the collective darkness that inhabits both Europe and Africa. When the third-person narrator speaks at the beginning of the novel, though, he speaks of inseparable images, like an interminable skyline blending seamlessly with the sea. This novel has a legacy that has gone beyond anything that Conrad could ever imagine. And that's not to say it's been all good. Chinua Achebe, author of the Nigerian epic Things Fall Apart, called Conrad a bloody racist who treated the oppressed Africans as symbols of European evil and not actually as people. While I agree that such a novel would not fly as well today, I think that we can't leave out the possibility of Marlowe's narration being flawed. The novel prophesied the alienation that would haunt authors during and after World War I. It also foresaw the Freudian return to the mind, the rise of modernist language, and of course, the eventual end of European imperialism upon the African continent.